Today, we uncover the tragic story of Bianca Patrice Rainer, a young mother whose life was cut short in a brutal and unexpected turn of events. It was an ordinary day, the kind where nothing seems out of place, until the call came in, a shocking discovery, a woman found dead. But this was just the beginning. The officers who walked into that scene weren't prepared for what awaited them: heartbreak, confusion, and questions that would unravel over the next 24 hours. This case wasn't just a tragedy, it was a perplexing puzzle. As the pieces slowly came together, a sense of darkness began to creep in, threatening to overwhelm the entire team. The Bville Police Department in Arkansas received an emergency call on the morning of June 20th, 2018. A passerby found an unresponsive person in an abandoned house on the outskirts of town. Lieutenant Michael Danar was dispatched to the scene, feeling the case might be more complex than initially reported. He met the 911 caller, a gas meter reader, who had stumbled upon the unsettling site during his usual morning route. The caller led the lieutenant to the suspected scene, which resembled a horrific scene straight out of a movie, unfolding in broad daylight. At this point, the investigation was still in its early stages, but it would quickly become one of the fastest cases the department had ever tackled. Even then, Lieutenant Danar trusted his instincts and sensed that the caller wasn't involved. Once the body was confirmed, the seriousness of the situation became clear, and additional officers were promptly dispatched to the scene. What had started as a routine call had now escalated into a critical crime scene investigation. With the area secured, officers proceeded cautiously, wary of a potential suspect still nearby. Every detail, they knew, would be crucial to solving the case. After clearing the house, the forensic team confirmed the death wasn't accidental and made unsettling observations, leading to a discovery that deepened the mystery. The woman's identity remained a mystery, with no ID found, but a floral tattoo stood out. As the investigation progressed, a crowd gathered, and a potential suspect emerged closer than expected. The woman, now identified as Jane Doe, might have been Bianca Patrice Rainer, but before they could gather more information, the mysterious man vanished. Jasper Perry, the individual who had witnessed the incident, was located, and an officer was dispatched to his residence. This development brought investigators closer to confirming the victim's identity and potentially making significant progress in the investigation. The clothing description provided by Jasper regarding his friend Bianca closely aligned with the characteristics of the unidentified individual, Jane Doe. This crucial piece of information assisted in confirming the victim's identity, prompting an officer to notify Bianca's family. Bianca, a 29-year-old mother of two, was positively identified. This significant breakthrough, while awaiting the autopsy results, shifted the investigators' focus towards Bianca's family. They began meticulously piecing together the details of her life and the circumstances surrounding her tragic demise. While Jasper had provided crucial information to the Bville Police Department that aided in identifying the victim, this did not deter investigators from considering him as a potential suspect from the very beginning. Jasper was called in to explain his claim of being the last person to see Bianca alive, as the investigation began to point to another individual as the likely culprit in her death. The suspected sexual motive carried significant weight in the investigation due to the victim's condition, which exhibited strong indicators of sexual assault. Jasper showed signs of dishonesty during his questioning, strengthening his status as the primary suspect in the case. Although he was uncooperative, detectives discovered an unexpected detail that significantly heightened their suspicions. The pressure on Jasper intensified as the interrogation grew more relentless in pursuit of the full truth. If he continued to withhold information, investigators were ready to push further to uncover it. The polygraph test was carried out by Detective Jason Simpkin. Following hours of interrogation, Jasper was brought back to hear the results, which were certain to leave him shocked. The polygraph results were inconsistent, suggesting that Jasper was either attempting to mislead the investigators or concealing critical details about Bianca's death. In response, they adjusted their approach and intensified their efforts to extract the truth from him. They chose to increase the pressure further, believing it might compel him to reveal the secret he was keeping. The investigators questioned Jasper relentlessly for hours, but he continued to insist on his innocence. Eventually, they shifted tactics, moving from probing questions to directly accusing him of the murder, hoping to provoke a confession. Nothing seemed effective in uncovering the truth about what Jasper was concealing. The investigation hit a roadblock, leading to Jasper's temporary release. While awaiting autopsy results, detectives uncovered a new lead. Bianca had been involved with another man, not Jasper, shifting the case's focus. Shortly after, detectives began interviewing this new lead at the station. She had a free-spirited nature, and they had been on a weekend trip together. Was this man subtly revealing his involvement in Bianca's murder? Like Jasper, he denied any connection, but there was one key similarity between them. They needed more information, so they focused on asking more specific questions about the trip, which had now become a key point of interest in their investigation. Despite new information, the detectives lacked enough to accuse the new suspect. With the list of potential suspects growing, they had no choice but to wait for the autopsy results to move forward. The pressure was just as overwhelming for the investigators as it was for the family. While awaiting the autopsy results, the investigators pressed on with their search. Their persistence paid off when they uncovered a shocking revelation that would reignite the investigation. In this bewildering case, detectives were on the verge of interviewing their third suspect in less than 24 hours. This suspected offender had an explanation to offer, claiming that everything began with him simply being a concerned neighbor, willing to assist someone who might have been in trouble. Initially, Ricky's story seemed credible, but the officers were wary due to his history. They soon identified a significant issue with his account. He claimed he was there searching for a lost wrist brace, which didn't quite add up. Detectives decided to escalate their approach. Ricky's DNA was not only collected, but he was also scheduled to take a lie detector test. After a grueling lie detector test, the results were in, and Ricky was left to wait. The detectives, however, weren't ready for what was to come. When the results arrived, they were as damning as, if not worse than, Jasper's. With only one suspect left, the detectives were done with games, and it would soon be evident in the aggressive tactics they were about to use on Ricky. Despite Ricky's poor results on the lie detector test, he remained silent. The detectives, familiar with his history, adjusted their approach. Convinced he was involved, they returned to the scene, now focusing on the current residents of Bianca's former home to gather more evidence. Ricky's claim of searching for a wrist brace was confirmed by the new tenant, but the detective decided to stay a little longer, sensing there was more to uncover. The new tenant was clearly deceptive, and it was unclear why he was not only acting confused, but also concealing his true identity. The detectives decided to search the house, and what they found left them completely unprepared. As soon as the detectives entered the house, they discovered something that unmistakably indicated they were standing at the crime scene. The detectives had been focusing on gathering evidence against their primary suspect, Ricky, but instead they were about to bring an entirely new suspect into the station. The drama, however, was far from over. The man had fabricated his identity, and during a search for a weapon, the detective found an ID card, the same one the man had said was lost just minutes before. Yet, the card revealed a different name. The tenant claimed the ID belonged to his friend, but the photo clearly resembled him. To confirm the identity, the detective decided to use an old-school tactic. He referred to him as Harold, and the suspect replied. The suspect, now confirmed to be Harold, was brought in for more questioning. While he knew about Bianca's murder, the real question was whether he was involved, as the police had suspected. The investigators used tactical questioning on Harold, urging him to confess, warning that his situation could become much direr if he didn't. Beyond Harold's lies, there was a compelling reason the detectives believed he had been in contact with Bianca on the night of her murder, a puzzle piece found on her body. It appeared to have come from Harold's living room. The detective's strategy during questioning would soon prove successful. After Harold finally confessed to his connection with the victim, the detectives started piecing together other links that ultimately led to the crime. The detectives were convinced that Harold wasn't revealing the full truth. While he was beginning to crack, they knew they'd need to adjust their interrogation approach before they could secure a confession or solid lead. After hours of intense questioning, Harold was starting to unravel, but he still wasn't ready to confess. He was on the verge of an emotional breakdown, yet he hadn't disclosed what had happened to Bianca. As the interrogators took turns dismantling the facade Harold had put up, they eventually felt confident that he was beginning to crack. It started with a partial confession. Harold admitted that he and Bianca had been involved in an arrangement. However, he claimed that Bianca had a gun and attacked him, forcing him to strike in self-defense, which tragically resulted in her death. The detectives realized they had a partial confession, but they were determined to get more. Harold was clearly vulnerable, and with a little push, his entire story could collapse. They decided that revisiting the crime scene might trigger his overwhelming guilt and lead him to fully confess. However, what happened next would turn the tables on them in an unexpected way. As the officers arrived at Harold's residence, the crime scene, a timid Harold, his face lowered and cap pulled low, appeared on the verge of a complete personality transformation. Offered a cigarette to alleviate his tension, an unsettling shift seemed to occur within him as he began to recount the events of the crime. Harold began to recount the sequence of events that led up to the crime. Harold claimed Bianca started the confrontation and he struck her in self-defense. However, what struck the detectives was not his account of the incident, but the unusual energy and enthusiasm he displayed while recounting it. Harold chuckled as he reenacted the sounds of the blows he delivered while beating Bianca to death. Harold placed Bianca's lifeless body in a trash can and dragged it to her house. The investigative team secured a confession within 24 hours of finding Bianca's body. The autopsy report brought an unexpected surprise the next day. The autopsy results strengthened the case against Harold Bennett, revealing the crime as murder, not self-defense, and likely sadistic. As the jury delivered their verdict, Bianca's family felt a sense of relief, yet true closure remained elusive due to the overwhelming grief of their loss. While Harold's guilt was clear, unanswered questions lingered. Was his violent anger linked to personal issues or financial disputes? And what about Jasper? If he's truly innocent, what might he be hiding? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more gripping crime stories.